These are, as both our dean and the ambassador said, challenging and interesting times. So instead of doing a country-by-country overview of the region, since most of you are engaged in this part of the world, and you know maybe even more than I do about many of these countries, instead of doing that, what I would like to do is talk about three issues, basically. And I want to start by doing a little list of some of the challenges that Latin America, from an economic point of view, is going to face in the next year or so. The first one is the Federal Reserve is going to start increasing interest rates. And that's going to happen, we don't know when. The Fed met last week. But we had a new data that was released today on the labor market with a very, very robust increase in employment, steady low rate of unemployment. So we're going to see the end, or we are seeing the end of this long period of easy money. And in the last 20 years, the Fed has raised interest rates only 3 times. The first one was in 1994. The second one was in 1999, 2000. And the third one was in 2004 and 2006. Now, we are used to this notion that the Fed is going to increase interest rates and to discuss what may happen when that event occurs. But as I said, only 3 times in the last 20 years. The first one, as I said, 94, that contributed significantly to the Mexican crisis of 94, the so-called error de diciembre. The second one, 99, 2000, contributed in sophisticated and indirect ways to the big, large Argentine crisis of 2001. So the first 2 of these 3 events that we are seeing one coming now, and it's going to be very significant, coincided with 2 of the largest crises in the region. The third one, 04, 06, the Federal Reserve increased interest rates by even more than in the previous 2, and nothing happened in Latin America. And a key question is, how is it going to look this time around? Or what could the governments of Latin America do in order to avoid the type of crisis that we saw in 94, 95, Mexico, and then there was contagion throughout the rest of the region, or the crisis that affected Argentina in 2001 that then engulfed Uruguay and the Dominican Republic, and it had collateral effects over the rest of the region. So I think that what's going to happen is that this time it's going to be not as traumatic, but not as easy as it was in 04, 06. And the reason for that, we have to search in, well, why was 04, 06 so different? And it was different because of China. China had emerged as the super emerging power in the world, and it was buying all sorts of products from everywhere, but mostly buying commodities from Latin America. Soybeans from Argentina and Brazil, iron ore from Brazil, copper from Chile and Peru, and so on and so forth. China, with its great demand, its appetite for commodities, and its big external surplus that provided capital to the rest of the world, helped Latin America absorb the shock of the Fed raising interest rates by 425 basis points. China, it was announced yesterday, it's projecting, the government of China is projecting the lowest rate of growth that it has projected in the last 25 years. Further, the big surplus in the external accounts that China had, when a country has a big surplus, it means that it has money to spare, and that money to spare is spent lending it in other countries, investing it in other countries. That large surplus that at one point was 11% of China's GDP has basically disappeared. So there isn't China anymore to help Latin America absorb the Federal Reserve hike in interest rates and the tightening of liquidity that is coming our way. But on the other hand, the countries in the region are better prepared. They have been able in the last 10 years or so to follow what we economists call counter-cyclical fiscal policies, which means that when the times are good, you save a little money and you build a cushion that you can use when the times become tough. And that's going to happen. The second thing is that now inflation is very low. The ambassador mentioned that in Brazil it is higher than the target. But those of you that are a little older may remember that when that happened in the past, it meant inflation rates of 400, 500, 1,000%. Now everyone is worried about Brazil's inflation, which is about 7%, which is very high for US standards, but which is like Mickey Mouse type of inflation for Brazilian standards. So inflation is low, central banks are acting very professionally. Brazil has a very good central bank, a very professional one. And the third reason why I think that Latin America is going to do much better than in the past, and it's not going to collapse as a result of this liquidity squeeze that we're going to see in the world starting maybe in September. The big question is when this is really going to happen. The chairwoman of the Fed, Janet Yellen, would like to postpone it a little. There are people that are trying to urge the Fed to act sooner. We don't know when it's going to happen. But the third reason why Latin America this time is going to be spared is that every or almost every region, every country in the region today has flexible exchange rates. And by flexible exchange rates, we mean that they are not defending a pegged currency value that in the past was very negative as they try to defend these artificial currency values in an ineffective way, and speculators then attacked these currencies and the crisis came. So the main challenge that I see going forward is this combination. On the one hand, the Fed hiking interest rates and liquidity squeezing, as I said, are related to the fact that China is not going to grow as fast as before. It's not going to demand our commodities in the same pace as it did in the past few years. The prices of copper already, price of copper, soybean, iron ore, and other exports from the region already are down and probably are going to fall even further. So that is going to be an economic challenge. Let me now move to some of the political challenges in the region. I think that it's Guillermo Cabrera Infante, the Cuban novelist and great intellectual, used to say, it is really silly to talk about Latin America. Latin America does not exist. It's a collection of 18 different countries, and they all have their own particularities and their own specificities. And we just cannot put together the DR, Dominican Republic, and Uruguay. They are both small countries, but in one country they play baseball. In the other country, they have some of the better football players. And for those of you that don't know, football is the real thing with a round ball, not that one with a longish, funny ball that where the players are not real. I mean, they are not playing. They are like protected with those silly things. So you cannot. But in spite of what Cabrera Infante said, I'm going to still talk a little bit about Latin America. If one were to talk about the region as a whole, and there are exceptions and so on, the only thing that one could say is that the last 10 years have been 10 years of success. And success brings with it aspirations. And aspirations are complex. People want more. People realize that there is such a thing as dignity. They realize that there is such a thing as consumer rights, that they can demand things, that the political system... We haven't had in Latin America dictatorships for a long time. Now, some of you may say, well, that's not a big, I mean, that's the normal status of things, the normal, maybe, but we were not very normal in that regard. So success, as I said, brings aspirations. Aspirations are politically complex, and that is going to be an issue. And we're going to have a panel today that is going to talk about, and I have no idea what the panelists are going to say, but they're going to talk about the middle class. And the middle class aspires to things. And for too long, too many companies in our region have abused consumers. And these companies are large companies, medium-sized companies, and small companies. I was born in Chile, and the greatest abuse that I find that affects consumers in Chile comes from taxi drivers, which is a very small type of entrepreneur. Most taxi drivers in Chile own their own car, and that's all their asset, and that's their business. Chile is the only country that I know where the responsibility for having the right change is on the passenger. So if it is 2,000 pesos and you have a 10,000 pesos note, the driver keeps the change. In every other country in the world, if they don't have change, then you'd ride for free. All right? Now, here is, no tengo vuelto. And then they sit there, and you have to get out of the car, find someone that will have change. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen to you. So abuse is going to come to an end. And this is good. This political, many people and private sector leaders are afraid of this turmoil and this political upheaval that we're seeing in Latin America. We're in country after country after country. We're seeing demonstrations. I think that it is good because it is the reflection that the consumer is rising, that the consumer now, it's part of the middle class. The consumer now has money to spend. It realizes that money gives him or her power. And it's demanding, as I say, to be treated in a dignified way, that there are no abuses, that the small print is fair and it doesn't turn against them in bad times. But this is going to be a challenge. The institutions of the region are not ready for this. The political system is not ready for this. But it's something that we have to discuss, we have to welcome. And our obligation as academics, as business leaders, and so on, is to try to channel this whole discontent, if you want, that is healthy, because it reflects that people are alive and have hope and are empowered. I hate the word, but it's a good word in this case. This is healthy, and we should try to channel it in a way that it becomes effective. Let me now turn to another subject of our panel, which is the role of women, of one of our panels. I just recently wrote an article, my syndicated column in Latin America, about this subject, and I received some positive emails, but I was treated as a communist, among other things, for saying some of the things that I'm going to say now. So Liliana is gone, and I call the ambassador Liliana since we go a long time back, way back in Guatemala. She's the ambassador to Brazil, but in the old diplomatic discussion or view of Latin America, there was an important component or an important entity called, which was informal, called the ABC, Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. And if we look today at the ABC is 100% governed by women. We have President Dilma Rousseff in Brazil, President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner in Argentina, and President Michelle Bachelet in Chile. So if you had a computer go around the world and you divided the regions into smaller groups, not so small as to have 100 countries, but some kind of groups, the computer would tell you that the ABC, Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, is the most friendly region in the world. They are governed, all three countries governed by women. Now, it turns out that there are lots of problems. And let me just give you a few figures from Chile, which is the country that I looked at. There are 25 universities that are in the top echelon in Chile. Okay? Chile is a very small country, 18. Well, actually, we don't know how many people, but between 16 and 18. It's true, we don't know. Apparently, there were some people that, I don't know, that's a different story. There are 25 universities. Not one has a woman president. Not one. Not one. There are, the Senate has 39 members, 6 women. The House has 120 members, 19 women. Supreme Court has 20 members, 6 women. You say, oh, they're doing really well. Where they are not. The top business schools, 1 dean is a woman. Our friend Manola Sanchez from Adolfo Ibáñez. So we picked the right school, all right? So the challenges, not one of the banks is run by a woman. There are very few members of boards that are women. And when I just wrote this down, the cabinet, it's not quite half and half, but there are a large number of women ministers. And President Bachelet last year was extremely successful. And she and her team were able to pass very difficult and legislation that is going to transform the country. There was a tax reform. There was approval of civil unions for homosexuals, which is the first step towards gay marriage. There is the beginning of an abortion law. Chile is the only country that doesn't have an abortion law. There was a reform of education. Very successful country. And the person that maneuvered, that was able to get this done, because she is in charge of the relations between the executive and Congress, is Jimena Rincon, a woman. And every time you saw the pictures in the newspapers or on TV, she was always sort of given a supporting role, although she was the one that was responsible for this incredible. So this problem is not only in the boardroom, not only in the Supreme Court, it happens and it is almost impalpable. People just react in this discriminating way. And I think that we have to be, we're very proud at UCLA for Judy pointing this out, for trying to work in the direction that we make improvements, not only at the university, but also in all the companies and firms where we are involved. So it's a very important subject, and I'm very proud that we're going to have this discussion here. Let me end up with something different. Let me talk about, some of you have come from Northern California or maybe from Fresno or San Diego or so on. And let me talk a little bit about technology, and then I'm going to talk about culture. So if you came from San Diego or from Fresno or from San Jose, it is highly likely that you were on a Brazilian-made airplane. And we usually don't relate technology to Latin America. But that's what probably happened. You were on an Embraer. All the commuting airplanes, not all, there's competition, thanks God, but a very large proportion of the commuter airplanes in the US are made in Brazil at Embraer. We learned, Judy and I, when we were in Mexico a week ago, that now Bell Helicopters is making the helicopters in Querétaro, in Mexico. Querétaro is now graduating the largest number of engineers in the Americas, and they are very high-quality engineers. And we can go through the different aspects of science and technology. Argentina has a number of medicine and physics science Nobel Prize winners. So has Mexico, so has Brazil. In my family, we had a very difficult situation a few years ago. One of the boys was born with a heart defect. And the heart defect is called the transposition of the great arteries, which means what the name says. The aorta and the pulmonar are switched. So oxygenated blood goes back to the heart and the baby dies. He was operated, he had surgery here at the UCLA hospital when he was 1 week old. It was an 11-hour open heart surgery. He's now 7, he was 7 2 days ago, and he's a perfectly normal boy. And the surgeon was a South African. This reflects you the amazing cosmopolitan aspect of UCLA. A South African doctor, Dr. Lax, trained in Israel, that now lives here. But the technique that he used was developed by Dr. Adib Jatini from Sao Paulo. So my Theo is alive today thanks to a Brazilian surgeon that in 1975 discovered how to do this, and now blue babies don't die, they live, and they are normal. And this is a dimension of Latin America that we're not that used to. Let me talk about a couple of more things, and then I'll be done. Let me talk about architecture. If you are interested in architecture, I suggest that you, if you haven't done it, walk around UCLA. And in particular, I suggest that you go and take a look at the Nanotechnology Center, which was designed by the Argentinian architect Rafael Viñoly, one of the top architects in the world. But here in LA, we also have a very interesting and an attractive building, the Pacific Design Center, that was designed by Cesar Pelli, also an Argentinian architect. But not only that, if you go and look at the Getty Villa, not the museum here, but the villa in Malibu, and the new wing, it was done by, which is absolutely spectacular in the way in which it blends the new and the old. It was done by two Argentinian architects, by Jorge Silvetti and Rodolfo Maldonado. And if you go in Santa Monica and look at the Broad Stage Theater, which is the newest place for the arts in Los Angeles, it was designed by the Chilean architect, my friend Renzo Zecchetto. So there is a contribution that Latin America makes to the arts in this part of the world. If you go downtown and you go to the Disney Symphony, it's likely that it's going to be conducted, the Philharmonic, by Gustavo de Madel, the wonderful Venezuelan conductor. So Latin America is not only about business. It is about the arts. It is about technology. It is about literature. 2 years ago, we've had the 50th anniversary of two great works of literature in Latin America. La Ciudad y los Perros from Mario Vargas Llosa and Rayuela of Julio Cortázar from Argentina. Both are alive in print and are being taught as we speak in universities from around the world. If we look at art, and I end with this, pop art, cinetic art, was developed first by Jesus Soto from Venezuela and from Julio Leparc from Argentina. So the point that I want to make is multiple. There are challenges and opportunities when it comes to business. As the ambassador said, it's not always easy, but it is always interesting. But the challenges and the opportunities and the exchange and the richness and the vitality of Latin America is not only in soybeans, in coffee, in iron ore, in silver and gold, in business opportunities. It's also in technology, pure science, architecture, the arts, and last but not least, cinema. And we have to remember that the Oscar for the Best Director went to a Mexican director, and I hear that there were some grumblings, but Alejandro González Iñárritu, of course, deserved it. And my prediction, and as an economist, I am not shy in making predictions, he's going to win a few more of them. Thank you very much.